Olivia Mendez's fingers cramped as she typed the last patient notes of her 12-hour shift. The medical clinic's harsh fluorescent lights highlighted the dark circles under her eyes. Badges of honor from 3 years of working while attending night classes. At 32, she wasn't where she'd imagined she would be a decade ago, transcribing doctors' rapid-fire dictations instead of writing prescriptions herself. Mendez, Dr. Palmer needs the Thompson file before you clock out, her supervisor called from the doorway. Already on his desk, Olivia replied, massaging her wrist. 6 more months of this, she reminded herself. 6 more months until she could apply for the physician assistant program she'd been working towards since. Thomas was born. Thomas, her brilliant 9-year-old, who deserved so much more than a perpetually exhausted mother in their cramped one-bedroom apartment. She glanced at her phone. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Winters, their elderly neighbor, who watched Thomas after school. Panic fluttered in her chest as she dialed back. "He's fine, dear," Mrs. Winters assured her. "Just a bit of a fever. He's resting now, but I thought you should know." Relief washed over Olivia, followed quickly by guilt. Another illness she wouldn't be there to comfort him through. Another school project she'd have to help with while half asleep. The weight of single parenthood pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Outside, Stettle's persistent November rain had transformed into a torrential downpour. Olivia pulled her thin jacket tighter, cursing the bus schedule that meant a 30-minute wait in the storm. Her umbrella, broken for weeks, offered little protection as she huddled beneath the bus shelter. "Need a ride?" Dr. Palmer pulled up in his luxury sedan, window rolled down despite the rain. "I'm fine, thank you," Olivia replied automatically. She'd learned early that accepting favors from male physicians often came with unspoken expectations. "Suit yourself," he shrugged. Driving away with a splash that soaked her worn sneakers, by the time the bus arrived, Olivia was drenched. Her medical textbook probably ruined, despite her efforts to shield it with her body. She found a seat near the back, away from the curious stares of drier passengers. The bus lurched forward, and Olivia's eyes grew heavy. Just a moment's rest, she promised herself. Just until the next stop. She dreamed of her old life before. Daniel walked out before she dropped out of medical school, before making ends meet became her daily mantra. ... In her dream, she stood in a sunlit operating room, confident and respected, her hands steady as she saved lives. The bus hit a pothole, jolting Olivia awake. Her head had fallen against the window, leaving a small, foggy circle from her breath. Outside, unfamiliar streets rolled by. She'd missed her stop. Panic rose in her throat as she pressed the request button. Thomas needed her. Mrs. Winters had already stayed 2 hours longer than agreed. Her son was sick, and she was failing him. Again, as she stumbled off the bus, a gust of wind tore her tattered umbrella from her grip, sending it cartwheeling down the street. Olivia watched it go, too exhausted to chase it. Something inside her, something that had been bending for years, finally broke. Standing in the rain, 5 miles from home with no money for a taxi, Olivia Mendez began to cry for the first time. In years, her tears indistinguishable from the raindrops on her face. The rain showed no mercy as Olivia calculated her options. Walking home would take over an hour, but waiting for the next bus meant precious minutes lost. Her phone buzzed a text from Mrs. Winters. "Thomas asking for you. Fever 101.2, ma'am." "Are you all right?" Olivia turned to find a tall man standing beneath a large black umbrella, concern etched across his features. He wore an expensive-looking coat, but his eyes held genuine warmth rather than judgment. "I'm fine," she said automatically, wiping her face. "Just missed my stop." "You're soaked through," he observed. "My car's just around the corner. I could drive you where you need to go." Every warning about strangers flashed through Olivia's mind, but something in his steady gaze made her hesitate. "My son is sick," she admitted. "I need to get home." "I'm Jackson," he offered, extending his hand. Jackson read, "I promise I'm not an axe murderer, just someone who's been stuck in the rain without options before." Olivia studied him. His honest face, the wedding ring conspicuously absent from his left hand, the kind lines around his eyes. Making a decision, she took his hand. "Olivia Mendez, live in Greenwood." I'm headed that direction anyway, Jackson said, sheltering her under his umbrella as they walked to a modest blue sedan, not the luxury vehicle she'd expected. During the drive, Olivia called Mrs. Winters to explain her delay. Jackson politely kept his eyes on the road, but she noticed his glances when she mentioned Thomas's medications and her work schedule. Medical scribe, she explained after hanging up. Not exactly where I planned to be at this point. Life rarely goes according to plan, Jackson replied, his voice carrying a weight that suggested personal experience. I was supposed to be happily married with a house full of kids by now. What happened instead? Olivia asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Jackson's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I built a successful tech company, married the wrong person, and now live alone in a condo that's too big and too quiet. When they reached her apartment building, Jackson insisted on walking her to her door, despite her protests. Mrs. Winters opened the door before Olivia could find her keys. Relief flooding her lined face. He's been asking for you, dear, she whispered, eyeing Jackson curiously. Olivia thanked Jackson profusely, but he waved away her gratitude. Anyone would have done the same, she said firmly. They wouldn't have. As Jackson turned to leave, Thomas appeared in the doorway, his small frame dwarfed by his dinosaur pajamas. Mom, he called, his voice raspy. I'm here, buddy. Olivia rushed to him, pressing her lips to his forehead. Too warm, Jackson watched the exchange, something unreadable crossing his face. Does he need anything? Medicine? Food? Before Olivia could decline, Thomas piped up. Could you make soup like Mom does? She's too tired. Olivia admonished, embarrassment heating her cheeks. But Jackson was already rolling up his sleeves. Soup, I can manage. It's about the only thing I can cook without burning down the kitchen. That night, as Thomas slept peacefully after a bowl of surprisingly good chicken soup, Olivia found herself sitting across from Jackson at her tiny kitchen table, wondering how a missed bus stop had led to this peculiar evening and why she wasn't in any hurry for it to end. 2 months after the rainy night encounter, Olivia found herself smiling more often. Jackson had become a fixture in their lives, helping Thomas with science projects, bringing groceries when Olivia worked late shifts, and occasionally convincing her to take rare moments for herself. You never mentioned you own Reed Tech Solutions, Olivia said one evening, holding up a business magazine with Jackson's face on the cover. They sat on her small balcony, Thomas already asleep inside. Jackson winced. Would it have mattered that first night? Probably, she admitted. I wouldn't have let you drive me home. Then I'm glad I didn't lead with my resume. He chuckled, but his expression soon turned serious. Olivia, there's something else I should tell you. My ex-wife, Veronica, a sharp knock interrupted him. Olivia opened the door to find a striking woman with perfectly styled hair and a designer coat that probably cost more than 3 months of Olivia's rent. So this is where you've been hiding? The woman said, ignoring Olivia completely as she addressed Jackson. Playing house with your charity case? Jackson's face hardened. Veronica? How did you find me? Did you really think Gerald wouldn't? Tell me, everyone's worried about this. This phase you're going through? Her eyes swept dismissively over the apartment. Though I must admit this is more pathetic than I imagined. You need to leave, Jackson said firmly, placing himself between Veronica and Olivia. Gladly, once I've said what I came to say, Veronica turned to Olivia. You should know what you're getting into, sweetie. Jackson doesn't stick around when things get difficult. Ask his brother how reliable he is in a crisis. Jackson paled. That's enough, Veronica, is it? Does she know about the inheritance you're about to receive? The board position? Or that your father's will stipulates you must be in a suitable marriage to access the family trust? Her smile was venomous. What perfect timing that you've found someone so ... needy. After Veronica left, silence hung heavy between them. Olivia busied herself with tidying the kitchen, avoiding Jackson's eyes. Olivia, he finally said. None of what she implied is true. It doesn't matter, she replied, voice carefully neutral. We're just friends, are we? Jackson stepped closer, because I thought we were becoming something more. Olivia set down the dish she was washing. Jackson, I have a son. Can't afford complications or drama from your ex-wife. And I definitely can't be someone's rebellion against their privileged upbringing. That's not what this is, he insisted. Then what is it? 2 months ago, you were a stranger. Now you're in our lives, making everything better, easier. But I don't know if I can trust it. Trust you. Jackson reached for her hand. My brother has schizophrenia. When he had his first major episode, I was building my company. Veronica convinced me he was manipulating me for money. By the time I realized she was wrong, he'd disappeared. It took me 3 years to find him. Olivia softened. Where is he now? In a treatment facility I pay for. I visit weekly. Thomas has met him twice. Those Saturdays I took him to the Science Museum. Olivia stared at him, realization dawning. You've been introducing Thomas to your family? Jackson nodded. James loves him. Says he reminds him of me before ... everything. Didn't you tell me? 'Cause I wanted you to know me just Jackson before you met the baggage that comes with being a Reed. He took a deep breath. My father died 6 months ago. There's an inheritance. Yes, there are expectations. But none of that matters compared to how I feel when I'm with you and Thomas. Olivia's phone buzzed the hospital, calling her in for an emergency shift. As she gathered her things, she felt caught between two worlds, the practical reality of her life as a struggling single mother and the unexpected possibility Jackson represented. I need time, she said finally. This is all too much, too fast. Jackson nodded, disappointment evident, but respect prevailing. I understand. But Olivia, I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to. Olivia didn't call Jackson for 3 weeks. She threw herself into work and study, ignoring the hollow feeling in her chest each time Thomas asked about him. It was better this way, she told herself. Cleaner, safer. Then Thomas came home from school with a failing science grade. I don't understand, Olivia said, reviewing his report. Science is your best subject. Thomas stared at his shoes. Jackson explained it better. He made it fun. The simple admission broke something in her. That night, after Thomas went to bed, Olivia called the number she'd been avoiding. Can we talk? She asked, when Jackson answered immediately. They met at a quiet cafe the next day during her lunch break. Jackson looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. I've been thinking about what you said, Olivia began, about wanting me to know you before I knew your situation. Jackson nodded, waiting. The thing is, Jackson, I've spent 9 years making every decision based on what's best for Thomas. Dating wasn't a priority. But then you showed up and became important to both of us. She took a deep breath. It scares me. What does? He asked softly, depending on someone again, letting Thomas get attached. The way you fit into our lives so easily it feels too good to be true? Jackson reached across the table, not quite. Touching her hand, I understand fear, Olivia. After my father died, after finding James and seeing what Veronica's manipulations cost us both, I was terrified of letting anyone close. What changed? I missed my bus stop, he said with a small smile. Ended up in a neighborhood I never visit, in a rainstorm that wasn't supposed to hit until later. Olivia's eyes widened. You were never headed toward Greenwood that night, not even close. I was supposed to be at a board meeting. His expression grew serious. I don't believe in fate, Olivia, but I do believe in recognizing when something matters. That weekend, Olivia agreed to bring Thomas to meet Jackson's brother properly. The residential facility was bright and welcoming. Nothing like the institution she'd imagined. James Reed shared his brother's eyes, but had a gentler presence. He greeted Thomas like an old friend, immediately showing him a collection of geodes. He'd been studying. Your mom came this time, James observed, smiling at Olivia. Jackson talks about you constantly, does he? Olivia asked, glancing at Jackson, who suddenly seemed fascinated by his brother's rock collection. Says you're the strongest person he's ever met, James continued. Coming from him, that means something. Later, as Thomas and James examined samples under a microscope, Jackson took Olivia's hand. I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why getting involved with me might seem like a bad idea, but I also know that when I'm with you and Thomas, everything makes sense. Olivia watched her son laughing with James, more animated than he'd been in weeks. "Thomas needs stability," she said quietly. "I can't promise him something that might disappear." "Then let me make the promise," Jackson replied. "To both of you." That evening, as they drove home, Thomas fell asleep in the back seat. In the quiet darkness of the car, Olivia finally asked the question she'd been holding back. "What happens when you're bored, or your family or your ex-wife tries to come between us again?" Jackson's answer was immediate and certain. They won't succeed. For the first time since Thomas was born, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a future, different from the one she'd planned, one with room for unexpected joy. 1 year later, Olivia stood in the tiny bathroom of their new home, staring at her reflection in disbelief. Her physician assistant program acceptance letter had arrived that morning, followed by a positive pregnancy test in the afternoon. Joy and panic warred within her as she heard Jackson's car in the driveway. How would he react? They'd discussed marriage but decided to wait until her education was complete. A baby would change everything again. "Liv, you home?" Jackson called his footsteps, accompanied by Thomas's excited chatter about his science fair victory. Tucking the test into her pocket, Olivia emerged to find them arranging Thomas's trophy on the mantel. "First place," Jackson announced proudly.
"Our boy is a genius. Our boy."
The casual claim still warmed her heart, especially seeing how Thomas beamed at Jackson's praise. In the years since they'd become a family, Thomas had blossomed under the shared attention and love. "We need to celebrate," Jackson declared. "How about that restaurant by the water?" During dinner, Thomas regaled them with details of his project, a renewable energy model. Got it. Inspired by Jackson's company's latest innovation, Olivia watched them, these two people who had become her world, and found courage in their joy. "I have news," she said when Thomas paused for breath. "2 pieces, actually." She placed the acceptance letter on the table. Jackson read it, his face lighting up with pride. "Olivia, this is incredible. All your hard work, I knew you'd make it." Thomas high-fived her across the table. "Does this mean you'll be Dr. Mendez soon?" "Pa Mendez," she corrected, smiling. "But that's not all." She pulled out the pregnancy test, laying it beside the letter. Jackson stared at it, then at her expression unreadable. "Is that our you?" he stammered. "Duh," she whispered suddenly. Uncertain. Jackson's eyes filled with tears as he moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Olivia Mendez, you continue to make my life more wonderful than I ever imagined possible." "But the timing," she protested weakly. "My program, your company expansion, we'll figure it out," he said with absolute certainty. Together. Thomas looked between them, confused. "What's happening?" "Your mom is going to be a brilliant medical professional," Jackson explained, "and we're going to have a baby." Thomas's eyes widened. "I'm going to be a brother. That's okay with you," Olivia said carefully. Thomas considered this seriously. "Will the baby like science?" "I bet they will." Jackson laughed. "Especially with you as their teacher?" Later that night, as Thomas slept and Jackson held her close, Olivia finally gave voice to her lingering fear. "What if I can't do it all? Be a mother to 2 children, complete my program, be what you need?" Jackson brushed her hair from her forehead. "Olivia, do you remember what you told me the day we moved in together? I worried about being a good father figure to Thomas." She nodded. "That you didn't have to be perfect. You just had to be present." "Exactly. We don't have to do everything perfectly. We just have to be present for each other." He placed his hand gently over her stomach. "All 4 of us." 6 months later, as Olivia balanced her growing belly with her textbooks, Veronica made one final attempt to drive them apart, threatening a lawsuit over the Reed family trust. Jackson surprised everyone by relinquishing his claim entirely, establishing a separate foundation for innovative medical technologies instead, with Olivia on the board. "You chose us over your inheritance," Olivia marveled when he told her. Jackson shook his head. "No choice at all. You and Thomas and this little one you are my inheritance. The only legacy that matters." On a bright spring morning, with Thomas holding her hand and Jackson by her side, Olivia welcomed their daughter into the world. As the tiny girl grabbed her finger with surprising strength, Olivia thought about the path that had led her a missed bus stop, a rainstorm, a moment of despair that had somehow opened the door to hope. "What should we name her?" Jackson asked, eyes never leaving their daughter's face. "Hope," Olivia said without hesitation. "Her name is Hope." For in the end, that's what their story had always been about, finding hope in the moments when it seemed most lost and holding on to it with both hands through whatever storms might come.